organized our uprising in so far, or we will organize it in so far 3 waves, starting this fall, late September. There will be the first wave with the topic of politics. So we will show at places where institutionalized politics happen that, like we said, we are not okay with things happening, things have to change dramatically, and we will disrupt places where these decisions that bring us deeper and deeper into the crisis are made and put pressure on politicians and power holders. So how is this happening? For years there have many actions happened, small actions, more disruptive ones, more risky ones, less risky ones, like Anne Glenda style with thousands of people, or just one person sabotaging something. So we will provide an umbrella for that and the topic. The second wave, then beginning of next year, will be under the topic of finance, financialization. So we will try to disturb the system that is financing the climate crisis and show that what the banks are doing, what the finance system is doing, is also bringing us deeper and deeper into this crisis, and that also this has to change. And then in early or spring of 2020, there will be the third wave, and this will be under the topic of the economy. So there we will try to disrupt places where hubs, very important spaces of the economy are situated. For example, places where a lot of transport takes place, places where things are shipped, places where things are produced on a big scale, and so on. Yeah. So, as a platform, as organizing persons, we will provide some things to help the groups and the actions seeing themselves under this umbrella to organize some parts of what they are doing, and to come closer together to do networking to know what each other is doing. So we have some means of communication we can provide for you as groups, as persons, to exchange and to know what's going on in other countries or in your country, in other groups and different times, and to come together also when it comes to your outreach, your mobilization, your communication. We are constantly networking, so there's things like email lists and other means of exchange just for organizational means. We just had our third Europe-wide conference right here, like 2 tents from here, at this very place, where we will talk about a little bit more later. But that's the place where the, so to speak, biggest decisions, I almost don't want to say decisions, but somehow decisions are taken for the platform. I also have to say all the things that are discussed, prepared and decided upon in anywhere under this platform, in this platform, are not binding for any group. It's more just preparing and facilitating things for helping other group, helping other groups within this frame. And what we also do is providing other help, for example, in the form of guidelines or key messages any groups could use for their press work, for their communication work. So just help to give you a picture of what is happening all over Europe, why are we doing this. So just, for example, patterns, texts, and so on. Yeah.
So it was already mentioned that we were hosted by the Climate Camp to hold our third, by 2020 meeting here. And that happened from Saturday until yesterday, so for 4 days. And we had, a lot of participation. We had over 15 countries being represented in this very meeting here. And it was well, a lot of people stayed for 3 days, others for 4, but we also had some people just, like, I don't know, having a glance into the tent and joining for a few hours. So it is a very open, tries to be a very open space. And yeah, as already mentioned, there are some decisions taken in the sense of that we discuss things, proposals, and then we see like what the opinion and the feelings are around these topics, and then usually, well, some of these things are taken into account and then said like, okay, this is a concrete proposal, and whoever group, platform, whoever individual feels comfortable with this proposal, they can take it on and for instance, use that communication tool that we have kind of agreed upon. But yeah, we are very different, from very different backgrounds. We do share a similar theory of change, so I'm thinking like how we can change, make happen until 2020, but we still do have different techniques that we think are more valuable than others probably. Some people probably have a more well understanding of going for like high risk actions. Other people think that with low risk actions and like reaching out to a broader public, we can gain this mass that we need. So we welcome everyone with the different opinions, with different tactics, and trying to take everything into account. And as already mentioned, you don't have to take on anything that you don't feel comfortable with, that doesn't fit within your idea of how to make change happen. So generally just want to make sure and use this space here to network, to connect with each other, to hear about the different realities, and also like, you know, become a bit more aware of what's happening in, because now we are here in like in Germany, Central Europe, and probably here struggles look very differently than in Eastern Europe, or they look in Southern Europe. So yeah, just become more aware of this, and have a space to meet physically, which of course always is very important, as like mailing lists and so on can be very helpful to connect and to share. But physical meetings, of course, do create a certain atmosphere that you probably can't replicate with digital tools. So during this conference, we looked at different demands that were worked on and can be proposed, quite broad demands that groups then can take on, can use if they want to make their actions, demonstrations and so on public. They can use these ones. But we are also very critical towards demands in general, so we also like included some discussions about, do we actually need to have demands? So yeah, I just want to point out that we try to look at all these things from very different angles and not just take things for granted. And otherwise we talked about communication tools, we talked about the different waves, about timings, about certain actions that we want to probably focus on and try to mobilize internationally, and how we can translate these things into our local context. Loads of things happening, as I mentioned, a lot with 15 different countries, and we talked a lot about this European platform so far. We are very aware of the fact that, well, it is limited in its regional space to Europe so far, and we are in contact with certain countries of the global south. But we think it is important, and they look at us and see what are the experience we are making, how we are proceeding. So we think that it's really of our responsibility now to show that this can actually work. That we can make it work here, because it is our responsibility, because we kind of fucked up here a lot, to make things work here first, and that then in the global south, hopefully countries and groups and movements can see that we probably had some good experiences here, or we had some experiences here, and then see what they can pick up from just what makes sense maybe in their context too. Yeah, and I hope I didn't forget anything about the conference.
Somehow I think you're not excited enough, because we're speaking about the revolution here, and I think it's not enough for me. So I think we should a bit visualize how could such a wave look like. I mean, such a wave like overthrowing capitalism. We have a nice drawing there that shows. You cannot see it from here, doesn't matter, but it shows the wave and there's capitalism on it. So how is that going to look like? Well, I have to say, I think we made it more or less clear. There's so many different groups, and I also have to say, different groups see themselves more or less under this, or not at all also, under this umbrella. And this will also be communication-wise, of course, handled differently. How groups say if and how much and how they are part of this uprising. But however, how I would see such a wave, or how I could imagine it, would be like that. So like, let's say, around the 20th of September, there will start, there will be demonstrations all over Europe. Fridays for Future will do big demonstrations and hopefully other things. So there will be hundreds of thousands of people on the street all over Europe, and there will be strikes 1 week at least, already showing that people are not just going onto the streets when in their free time and showing they're not okay with this, but actually themselves doing a little bit to disrupt the system, to disturb the system. And then, we don't have so much time yet, but I think that's important to create some spirit. Then there will be, at the same time, taking other actions place, small actions, people showing their, like, maybe activists who have a little bit more experience, showing that they're part of this, maybe doing something that's a little bit more risky. We don't know, we don't say they should do it, but maybe there are some people having ideas and then they shut down something to show what is their opinion about the system fucking up the planet. And well, then there will be, of course, I think also during the first wave, which is more or less 1 month, being actions by Extinction Rebellion, and maybe also people who don't see themselves as Extinction Rebellion, but people going to important places in cities, to central points, and shutting down parts of cities and blocking streets and other things. Then there will be maybe at some points Ende Gelände style actions where thousands of people march into whatever thing, a coal pit or anything else, and sitting there around for 1 or 2 or 3 days, also saying we are part of this uprising. Well, then there will be maybe some people who just don't work anymore for 1 or 2 or 3 days or 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, and saying I do this because I care about the situation, I care about the crisis we're facing, and I want something to change. Then there will be maybe some people who just, they don't want to, they cannot take risk, but they say, I just keep standing in the elevator, I just stay there, I don't move for a bit, just, I don't know, and it gets more and more and more, and so people cannot use elevators or other things, means of transportation. I just stay there, I sit down. What else? Well, maybe there will be people climbing something, staying there, showing signs. Maybe, I don't know, maybe people will approach the power holders that are doing the things we want to change. They're keeping up the system and tell them right into their faces what is going wrong and what they think about it. And things like that will happen. Hopefully, many, many things like that will happen. And if the first wave is not enough and nothing changes, we will come back. There will be a second wave. If that's not changing enough, then we will come back. There will be a third wave. And we will come back and back and back over and over again until we change the system.
Maybes of actions and things that can be done, and we invite you to add your maybe to this, your idea of how you want to bring about change. And maybe you think now, oh, this sounds quite interesting, or maybe it still sounds a bit abstract, but we would like to invite you to join by 2020 Rise Up. You can do this as an individual. It's great if you have a group, if you're a part of an NGO, anything. We have NGOs, we have local grassroots groups so far, some individuals, some groups of friends that are like prone of this idea, so we would like to invite you. We know that the Golden Digger rally is starting soon, so I think we would finish here and invite you to have some questions, and otherwise we'll stick around for a bit by 2020 tent, and there will be a workshop afterwards, yes, at 11?
11:15.
11:15.
Just if people have questions and want to talk about it.
Okay, cool. So go with questions maybe at 11:15 to the workshop tent. And if you have, yeah, I think that's it.
We also have 5 minutes for questions now. So if something's urgent, and cannot wait for the workshop afterwards.
Hello, good morning. I have 2 questions. The first one is, so it's been very great hearing your plans and everything. I think it's a great scheme you've come up with. I'm wondering, do you have experts from the fields, like the financial sphere, the climate sciences, because you want to make a lot of changes and disruption in many different fields? How are scientists, experts, or think tanks involved in your movement? And my second question is, so best case scenario, the changes are made, and there's a system disruption happening here in Europe or the global north. I'm just wondering, because we're living in such a globalized and neoliberalist world, economy as well. I think those changes happening here in Europe, for example, might have certain influences in the global south. Maybe it will be my brother and sister losing their jobs, or who knows what happened. So you want to set like a role model, a best practice here in the global north, but I think it could also be helpful to get people from the global south get involved more in the movement. That's it.
So about the first question, if there's experts basically in our movement, that's very important. It's important to have knowledge and also a picture of what comes after this system. But what we are about is putting pressure on power holders and shifting also opinion of people, opinion more or less of society to a certain extent. That's the things we try to do, and all the solutions are out there. There's millions of different solutions, and we as a platform, first of all, we don't say anyone, we have to do this in this way, but we say it's urgent, we have to rise up to change something, and we have to walk the way, we have to show the way by walking it. We will make mistakes, of course, if we change everything basically in society, but that's not what it is about. It's just we have to change, and what comes afterwards will, with a high likelihood, will be better, I hope. So yeah, that's what I think is the important thing.
Yeah, I would go in the same direction, and yeah, just point out we see ourselves like as activists. Yeah, we have to put on that pressure. We have to disrupt the system, which we think is like what we agree on is bad, is causing like these multiple crises. But there's so many different solutions out there, and we think there's like the scientists, the experts out there. We think those people have the responsibility to actually also put on these solutions, take on these solutions, and make them work. We are here to disrupt. We are here to make sure that the society gets an understanding of, well, this current system is bad, and that they can broaden their imaginary and come together to find those solutions, and then they are put on in practice together with some people that have the responsibility. If not, the entire responsibility is again shifted on us back as activists, as you are asking for disrupting the system and asking for all the solutions out there, which can't come only from us.
And about the second question, another very important message for us is that we are fighting for a future that leaves no one behind. So we are fighting also for a just transition in the most intersectional way, I want to say. And, well, the changes will be dramatic, but we cannot leave anyone behind. And yeah, I think it's a lot about justice, what we are fighting for. It's not we have to disrupt things, and we don't care about what comes afterwards. And also, to say this again, when it comes to our relation here in Europe with the Global South, I think what we also have to create is some kind of space. We don't want to say we want to replicate what's happening here anywhere else, but to create space for other people at other places to do what they want to do and to find their own way. Other questions? I think we have maybe time for one more. Great. If there's no other questions, then thanks for your interest, for your attention. Like we said, there's the workshop taking place at 11:15. Right there at the By 2020 Rise Up tents, there's a sign, you will see it, you will see us. Yeah, have a nice climate camp.